a jeans, whether as a cultural.
Let me say a special good morning to one and all. Those of you listening to Classic Radio, those of you viewing GBN TV, good morning. It's Monday. It's the 16th day of June, 2025. Hope all is well with everyone who is listening and viewing this morning. Let me say a special good morning to those of you out there in the diaspora who listens and view to the point religiously. Thank you so much for being, of course, taking the time out to always listen and view the program. It's a pleasure to always have you with us here on the program. Still waiting on my guest, Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. I guess he got a little bit delayed. That's why he's not here as yet. And so just thought I kick things off in the interim until he's here. So let me say good morning to of course, those of you on the nation's roads, whether you are on a bus, in your private cars, or you're driving along on the nation's roads, of course, please do so with that due care and attention. And looking for folks who may be walking along on the nation's roads. There are still youngsters who probably be going to school and probably walking to school this morning. 9 o'clock it might be a little bit late, but it happens at times. And on Monday too. I know. For some reason, traffic a bit slow this morning. For some reason, I myself got taken up in traffic this morning. Usually it's not like that on a Monday. For some reason, but this morning, for some reason, there's lots of traffic, especially around the time frame. Most likely you're thinking, well, a little after 8 a.m., everyone is, at work already, and to be caught up in the traffic, that was a bit of a delay for me this morning, but nevertheless, I got here. And I'm assuming it's a reason or reasons why Mr. McIntyre is not here as yet, and certainly will be here shortly. Didn't give me any indication that he was not going to be here this morning. Actually, we did had a earlier conversation, and I was, of course, anticipating our program this morning. So the lines are open. Of course, if you want to chime in on any matter in the interim, probably you're looking at the traffic from where you're living, and you want to give some shout outs on that, probably you have a solution. Hey, maybe they should do this or that, talk to folks about using the alternative routes. I think that's something folks should definitely look into. If you've been passing that particular route every morning and for some reason you realize, hey, maybe if I go the other way around, it may take me a minute or two, but certainly will get me on my destination moving instead of I'm stuck there for 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time. Try using some of the alternative routes once the road condition is good enough for you to pass there. Good morning once again. Classic Radio, GBN TV. We do have a call on the line. Caller, your life. Good morning and welcome.
Gigi, good morning. Belated Father's Day to you, man. But I know you had a wonderful one. That's very good.
You know that? You at my house?
Yes. And you didn't see a little bird pick up somewhere on the roof?
Well, thank you for the Father's Day shout out. I appreciate it a whole lot. But it was a pretty calm one for me. I for one, don't put a lot of energy into it. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Now, GT, there is a crisis in Grenada here. Mm-hmm. Whether we like it, whether we accept it or not, our labor force in general, the hard-working people, sometimes they say people doesn't want to work, but sometimes they have a reason, and it could be justified, that people have been abused continually in the workforce, and when you go to the labor department, there is no solution. Now, example, you work from 7 this morning to 7 tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. But of course, it's a private company, GT. So when the workers, they're not unionized, or they have no union to fight for them, so they go to the labor department. And the labor department, whoever they speak to, and the thing is, when they say, this is a private company, we cannot tell them how to make their schedule. And I oppose that. Because the labor code...
Hey, folks, we have Mr. McIntyre joining us. So, caller, I would ask you to, of course, if you could wrap up a wee bit, because Mr. McIntyre here was about for us to get started.
Mr. McIntyre wouldn't mind. The labor code say 8 hours per work shift. They're taking out the hour for the lunch break. So I would like the Labor Department to look into those matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a great day yourself. All right. So that was our first caller there. Mr. McIntyre, good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning to you, GT.
Shall I put on the detention book or something?
No, well, maybe you should, because actually, I text that I was probably would be a few minutes late because we had
probably I didn't pay attention.
No, I didn't text. I didn't press the send button.
You didn't send the send button. Okay,
No.
so that's
after I messaged you telling what we were going to be.
Yeah.
You know, later on, I realized that there were some folks coming from Carrick who they were a bit late.
Okay.
So we had to await them and so on before we actually started. So I know I was going to be delayed, so I sent that, but I didn't press
you write it out, but didn't send it. It happens sometimes. It happens.
So my profound apology to our listeners and followers. A pleasant good morning to you. Again, our fathers. Hope that you had a wonderful Father's Day. So greetings to everyone. And I did hear you express our greetings to folks in the diaspora and everything else this morning. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, happy belated Father's Day greeting going out to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I spent my time yesterday. It was very quiet. I reflected on some things of my past. I remember that my first son, who made me father in that time, I lost him, and I reflected on how much that meant to me. And his little son, as a part of him that's growing, I invited him over, so I had my grandson, my first grandson, with me, just to reflect on father and how my first son meant to me and so forth. So I was seeing a little portion of him starting all over again from the childhood growing up with so it was really a wonderful moving moment again for me on Father's Day. I actually went to church and I saw fathers being recognized and appreciated for their contribution. And some youngsters did give some really, really nice accolades to fathers and admonishing them as to the roles they should play and everything. Like Mr. Dominic and your son and all the others, and Kai and the others that really gave that a real tribute to fathers. That was very heartwarming. So congrats again to all the fathers.
It was, for me, it was a pretty quiet one.
Yeah.
I decided I don't usually always do it. So yesterday, I just see it as a normal day for me for some reason. I gave my truck a nice wash.
Yes, that's cool.
So usually I don't do it. So I pull out the power washer and things I don't do on a regular. So it probably felt a little Father's Day greeting going out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I gave it a really good wash.
And I got a wonderful.
That's what I actually
man. I got a wonderful gift from my daughter yesterday as well. She did something that she don't normally do in the kitchen yesterday. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
So that was a gift that she did not have to buy for me, but I really appreciated it and so forth. And all the friends who said things. I mean, every day should be Father's Day and every day should be Mother's Day, but there are times when those special recognition come.
Well, I got the usual shout out from my daughter. She don't live in Grenada, but you get the shout out, you get the messages and so forth. So that was all good.
And you have to also guard against the commercializing of the occasions, and that you spend wisely. And throughout people's life, you want to be able to give them the flowers all the time. Tell them when they're doing good.
All right. And you talk flowers. Who are we throwing out some flowers to this morning?
Yes, I looked for some entities. As you know, we speak in disaster preparedness, and this morning we're going to follow through on some work that we were doing in that sense. And I want to give flowers to the district committee under the leadership of Ms. Petra Williams. They conducted a training session in terms of their readiness for the 2025 hurricane season at the West Hall Secondary School. I really give them kudos for that. I think there was one nurse, there were some teachers, there were some other community members really mobilized, and they were really keen on ensuring that they are ready for the hurricane season to supplement and to complement the NADMA. And the NADMA community program officer was also in attendance, and that showed a semblance of structure, organizing, and preparedness. For this, I want to really shout out the flowers to them.
All right. Let me ask you this, sir. I mean, you probably pay more attention to than I would. How are you feeling in terms of the level of preparedness for 2025 from the various communities around the island? I'm sure you've been hearing information about how folks. You just spoke about the particular committee that is doing stuff and doing the various meetings and getting folks up to speed. How are you hearing in terms of the overall readiness for Grenada for 2025 season?
Yes.
Are we already in the season per se?
We are, definitely. We are in the official tropical cyclone season, and I can say what I know in terms of internal arrangement. There have been some internal meetings, and there have been spot meetings in terms of readiness across country. What, however, in my opinion, is lacking is the public information sufficiently. I'm not hearing across the airwaves and so on. The Met Office has given their angle of the 2025 tropical cyclone season. It's just an average season technically, and in some cases you can say just slightly above average. It can go, but what they did give their angle to that and did not create that hype in terms of the uneasiness for people. But I think what was embedded was the message of not being complacent, that it doesn't take all of the entire season to create some level of destruction or disaster. And so one of the meteorologists, I think, was on a program. I heard him. I was on one of the ends of one of the programs as well, speaking about how the region and us can, best be prepared. And some aspect of that information was definitely relayed from Met Services. So my observation generally in terms of where we should be, I think a lot more of the public education and information should be across more airwaves.
And with that said, you as you mentioned the public and the radio station and the television station, so both throwing out that information. Surely it should be left up to. Is it the NAGMA themselves should be, of course, encouraging those productions to be thrown out to the public, or is it should be left up to the radio station themselves to have these public service announcements, being made in-house and distributed on a regular, telling folks the ways of preparing themselves and just getting their minds in tune to know the season that we into?
Well, NADMA has the lead role in terms of directing the nation and providing the technical knowledge and the angles. And we have to agree and understand too that NADMA is established as a coordinating unit. It is not yet an established statutory body that could do beyond the regular call of duty. It's limited in a lot of ways in terms of its capacity to be able to deliver across country. But the foundation that has been built in terms of information readily available, it is the responsibility of every person to ensure that they take some aspect of national readiness. Different sectors and entities should also be proactive in understanding that whether you think I am not getting what I should be getting at a particular time, we should be responsible enough across country to be able to take up and realize that this is the hurricane or tropical cyclone season, and some things are likely to happen. Let us get on it. Let's do it. And I think more and more we expect to see national and community and home ownership of disaster risk reduction and disaster preparedness. And sometimes people become too dependent on national resource. Even after a crisis, people tend to be still depending solely on the state to help them to recover. But if every person, household, and sector, they decide to put some effort or more effort into pre-tropical cyclone season readiness or otherwise, you'll realize that it becomes a lot easier for entities to focus on the wider and the bigger things. If you understand that how the NADMA system is structured, it is structured for national coordination of things when they do happen, provide information before, during, and sometime after. But it also has responsibility for global and regional sourcing and coordinating of things if Grenada gets impacted. And so while yes, the national effort has to be undertaken, we have to look at the wider picture. So when something happened in Grenada, once it is declared a national disaster, otherwise you depend on external sources. And if we are small island developing states and we do not always have sufficient resources, we have to depend on outside entities, and I'm hoping that we could really get beyond that and continue to be so dependent on outside sources. But if we understand we do have that limitation, we have to ensure that the channels are open, that the bureaucracies, they are minimized to a large extent, so that when something happens, the disadvantage could be provided with some level of support as quickly as possible. Post-impact events.
All right. So, McIntyre, we do for our first break in the program. Let's take it when we come back. We're getting to the meat of our conversation. Stay with us, folks. To the point here, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We'll be right back. Don't touch it down.
Looking to take your business to new heights? Advertise with GPN on our social media platforms and get noticed by our 138,000 plus followers. Reach a massive engaged audience ready to connect with your brand. No matter your business size, GPN is here to help you grow. Contact us today at admin@gpn.gd or WhatsApp 407-8458 to get started.
Like a freestyle, the life blood flowing mile by mile. It's legacy, a beat that don't stop like Bob Marley said. One love on top, the sewage water out of sight, but it's always wrong, don't lose the light. From factories and wells so deep, corals, mangroves and fish they weep. Green water for the garden, keep it green. Save the cash and the earth gets clean. We use the water with a mindful mind. It's out of sight but never far behind. In nature, the answers always flow. Like water running pure, the cycle grows. It renews itself, same drop, same beat. It's all good, man, you got the heat. Water flow, no clean water, no pipes they grow. Protect our water, protect our future.
Time to go.
Hey everyone, here is an invitation to join me this and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on GBN Television 711 K105 FM, our Facebook page and YouTube channel for Kaiso Talk. Meet the Kaisonians, hear their stories, feel the vibes. Kaiso Talk, Wednesdays 8:30 p.m. Compliments the Grenville Credit Union.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back to our viewers. Welcome back, Mr. McIntyre. We're back inside on today's program. Last week we were off.
Yes,
we were
off. That was Whit Monday?
Yes, Whit Monday last week.
We came through nicely from the Whitsuntide games over 2 days. That was really cool. I tell you, I saw some national records established for Whitsuntide, some young people. But listen, GT, those guys were running fast. I saw Eaton, Sam and others. They were running. Eaton did like a 10-3 somebody, and so forth. And we had guys running 10-1, 10-2s, and so on at the national games. Trust me, in the 100 meter, they were doing good. And that youngster, Cassie Stevens and so on, is one of our young. And there's a young lady, a child's young lady under 13, I think it is. She's running fast nationally. We had St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had Barbados. We had Antigua, Barbuda. We had, did I say Barbados? Yeah. And we had St. Lucia as well. Okay. Some of these islands were competing here in Grenada over the Whitsuntide weekend. That was really cool. And I think I want to commend again the Grenada Athletic Association, GAA, for again staging a very successful event. And the hats off to the medical and physio team that were down there as well, providing that kind of service. So that was a real good thing.
So we could say the future for athletics for Grenada and the Caribbean is,
we're looking bright.
Is on a high.
Yeah, man, we're looking bright. To be honest, there are a lot of young people running really good times, really good times, and we see the scouting for talents. These young stars are exposed, very exposed, and it's good to see people who left school, colleges and so forth, they can find ways of still competing. I think this is one of the years when there were more athletic competitions happening locally, and that you may be responsible for the better times. Most of the athletes were doing their PBs. Quite a number of them. I saw a young lady really jumped out almost out of the stadium into the sea, maybe, because she ran so fast. I think there was this little child's young lady from Grenada. There's a young lady from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There's Eaton and others who were doing the PBs. Quite a number of them did their personal best at the event. It is really a good thing for Grenada.
All right, I'm certainly happy to hear that.
Yes.
Smack, we're into the season. Last week, a lot of conversation about the tropical conditions that were there. We saw the impact it had on Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
In terms of the flooding and stuff down there. We didn't get a heavy impact of it on this island, but we had some showers.
Yes.
Tell us our listeners and viewers, the post-impact of these activities that we're going to see more of that. We're going to be hearing more of it coming in the days and weeks ahead as the season continues to build up.
Yeah.
Concerns, if you do have any.
Yeah. So I feel if those who are following us really closely, we spoke of some little preparedness things we should do before the season actually kick in. We spoke about something we should do while the season is on us and continue to do. And we got off last week from what we were saying, some of the post after you've had an impact, something that you can do. But we need to be able to follow through on how you do in the post, including some of the things that we can do different.
Okay.
And we want to step into if people are going to be occupying shelters, if you have some places damaged or otherwise, how and you can prepare themselves for that. So some of the things we saw last couple of days because of the insistent rain that we had by just mere passage of a tropical wave that was generating itself, or it probably was just an area of disturbed weather, that cluster of convection that came through. We saw some small landslides. We saw some flooding in some areas showing up. What it has done is put us in a better place. It is showing us early enough some things that we need to continue to do. We look at the project in the Granitang area that I commended so well. But even the landslides that came down, that could have been minimized in a way. They widened the road so when the land slippage or the landslides happen, they do not block so much of the roadway, which is good.
Cause that major obstruction.
You can. That's correct. Because the road is much wider, if you have land slippage, you're going to still have areas that you can pass based on how the land. But I think much more should have been done in terms of terracing those sides to prevent that limit angle that they have. If you have the land shelling off because it just cut almost straight down without having enough of the slope, and not just the slope but having it terrace back. So if you have slippage, you're going to stop on one of those terraces rather than getting into the roadway. And then the size of the drains and so forth, I saw some of them, it's about 18 to 20 inches that they generated. Obviously some of them, the channels are not wide enough to take the volume of water, and some of them still come into the roadway, and it is eroding the asphalt and you can see that already very visible where it is pulling away. So they need to correct that. I saw lower down just in the Van Dam area is a good example in terms of the width. That one is about 24 plus to 30 inches wide, which is, in my opinion, the average that one should have to accommodate the volume of water. In the Granitang area, they do have the whipper holes, which is good, and I saw the water coming through that prevent too much moisture from staying at the base of the land itself to have more land slippage. The water was coming through those whipper holes that they have. Lower down in Vendom, I realized that they put those blocks as well, but they did not put the whipper holes. So in some cases, the engineering and the construction designs, they are not very consistent. And so it leads to some of the things that we have happening with us. So there are some things that we can prevent. And some of the areas that, again, are prone to flooding. For instance, the wonderful piece of work that we commended in the Mont Rouge area, where the road was resurfaced in that area. But the drains,
it was flooded there.
The drains on either side, it leaves a lot to be desired, because the drain from the Wronghouse, Mackey kind of a complex area, that drain coming from the Wall Street area runs right into, without being cleared, to run further down to the South St. George police station end. So the silt in that drain is built so high that it runs right into that proper surface that they did, and there wasn't enough runoff from those drains in terms of building it sufficiently and running into a particular direction, maybe running west rather than just settling there. So after you had this wonderful resurfacing of that road, you still have this situation where the drain work is not done, or they were not coordinated, because the information I received early enough before that resurfacing is that the skirting of that area were going to be done the drainage were going to be handled so that the water coming from it would run further down and out rather than coming and running to that area.
Yeah.
Both ends still leaves quite a bit to the desire. If you look from the KFC end coming in from the Cameron Park end, that isn't complete as well. So you do this wonderful piece of work, and then the exits and entrance, still one vehicle at a time could enter and exit, and still the water from those drains are running into that area. So what you find, if you have heavy rains and sun entering there, a lot of vehicles will still not be able to leave that parking, or some of them might get flood water problems, or if it gets too high, we may have problems going right down into the mall because that drain itself is running directly into that resurfaced area.
Lack of planning, in the simple way of saying it, lack of serious planning when these projects are taken place.
And planning could happen, yes, there could be some lack of planning, but I think also projections and coordination of events in terms of how do we ensure we have simultaneous activities that will give us the same results that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So if we are going to be doing the road surface, we're going to not just do the road surface, but we want to prevent the area as well from so we could coordinate with the entities that respond for drains and the surface so that we do that area and finish that section.
Yeah.
Because it makes less sense, in my opinion, that you do that, people can park, but when they park, they can't move because the flood water is going to come in because that drain is not well built, and so you're going to have problems. Yeah. So I think a lot of insight and foresight, it leaves a lot in our minds as to how do we speak to the people that do what they do, and do we just give projects
in terms of how these projects are done?
Absolutely.
Because you remember, one is always going to lead into another.
And as I spoke about the consistency in designs.
Yeah.
You see some people doing some drains, the box drains at a certain width, and the slipper drains at a certain angle or gradient as well, and others doing it differently. So should we not be consistent across? You look at some of our pedestrian crossings across country. Some are large, some are small, some are high, some are not so high. And then you ask, well, are we going to be consistent with that? Some are painted, some are not painted, some are maintained, others are not. Some are lit and others are not. So are we going to be consistent in that aspect of the road safety things and how we do that? I think a lot could be further enhanced in terms of what we should be doing. One of my comfort though, I think this program is paying a lot of dividends because they seem to be finding some way of listening and implementing some of the things that we spoke about. We go right back to the Grand Detang area. We spoke about those deep gullies and those deep box drains that were created by reason of water coming through. And we're seeing that they are filling back those areas now, and they're going to be concreting them, and they're going to put slipper drains more. So it makes more sense. You can feel the width of the road, and you can get faster runoff, and you can get more space for vehicles to move through. And as I mentioned, the psychological impact on the mind that it doesn't look as dangerous as you're driving through. So that in itself, I think we should not lose the energy for keeping our programs on and keeping our eyes on the issue on the programs, letting people know some of the things that they can do better.
All right. So McIntyre, we drew for a break. Let's say when we come back, I want us to talk about emergency shelters.
Okay. Absolutely.
And how are we to focus on that just as the season progresses, when we come back. Sure. Stay with us, folks. To the point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We coming right back after the break. Don't touch it down.
Looking to shop. Hey GBN family, we've got a brand new home on Facebook and you need to be there. Follow us now on Facebook at Grenada Broadcasting Network -GBN. Stay updated with the latest news, sports, entertainment, and everything Grenada. Don't miss out. Like, follow, and share. Grenada Broadcasting Network. Stay informed, stay ahead. First with the news, fast with the updates.
I want you to control your anger.
back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, once again. It's To The Point here on Classic Radio GBN TV. Me and Mr. Sylvan McIntyre and myself, we're here this morning in our usual conversation in terms of, disaster management and everything else that we talk about in place that, create that mindset of being ready.
Yes.
Just in case of, some issue happens. I'd like to say to that because let's even if an issue happens. So you always create that, have your mind in tune of what's going to take place. So back at that, before we took the break, I did mention to you, I want you to talk a wee bit about emergency shelters.
Yes.
We heard from NAGMA a couple of weeks ago. They did put out the notice about, the emergency shelters that are ready and up for that are ready.
Right.
You understand? We talk about those in Carriacou. I did speak to one of the representatives in Carriacou a couple of weeks ago and was talking about some that are ready, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Right.
So we certainly hope that just in case an issue develops and shelter is needed, I hope there is adequate amount when if it comes around.
Right.
But on the mainland, the southern part of the island, there's not much worry, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
St. Andrew, St. David, maybe not much of a worry for shelters in those areas.
Yeah.
But maybe St. Patrick and all of these other parts of the island. But still, there's a concern. Your take on emergency shelters, sir. From what angle would you want to talk about that this morning?
Yeah, that's an expansive issue in terms of shelters. I'm not too sure we're going to be able to cover all in this program.
Maybe briefly.
But I'll touch it really briefly and so on. But what I also want to say is our programs should not finish at 10 o'clock, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think disaster risk reduction information should become household to entities, media entities especially, who are expected to play their roles. And not just in the hurricane season, as they call it, or tropical cyclone season. But I think we need to see more, like, for instance, the list of shelters being declared, that media houses would repeat that.
Yeah.
Media houses and entities, print and electronic or otherwise, would generate their preparedness information as an internal in-house initiative.
Yeah.
And they depend on the backup resource from NADMA and those other entities that they can get it from to ensure that the technical information is right. But we want to be we look forward for the day when, as a nation, as a people, as media outlets and entities, that disaster risk reduction and hurricane tropical cyclone readiness becomes a household activity, so that it is generated naturally from within, without being spurred on too much from NADMA. And we think that too much dependence is on NADMA in terms of not doing their work or doing their work too much or too little, and we're not hearing anything from them. But I believe that people need to become more responsible as entities, and you guys don't feel like I'm bashing you, but I just feel across that media houses and entities should now become more aggressive in accessing the information and become more nationalistic, more be patriotic in terms of
get information,
get it and generate it. Put your own spin to it. Once it's nice, add music to it, add some vibes to it, so that it becomes kind of a audience user friendly sort of. Get the people who are kind of innovative and get some nice little spin to it during the hurricane season. Get that nice little chime for the children or otherwise that you can continue to play. That's nice. But the whole aspect of shelter and shelter readiness is really a big one. And shelter is really a temporary emergency means before, during, and shortly after the impact of some event, whether it is natural or human cause. Yeah. And note carefully that it is emergency shelters and not hurricane shelters.
Okay.
And I think across we become so hurricane and tropical cyclone centric that shelters are only spoken of during the hurricane season. But people need to know.
So technically, are you saying there's a difference between both?
Yes.
Hurricane shelter and emergency shelter?
That's correct. Because there are some emergency shelters that would not be suitable for hurricanes.
Okay.
Particularly before. But if you have a situation where some people lost their house because of a landslide, they need to be sheltered for a while. So in that kind of emergency
shelter at a time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If, for instance, there's a fire, people lost their house, there has to be some facilities, emergency shelter that you would take them from and put them into. The whole aspect of shelter management and shelter readiness has to become, in a lot of ways, more systematic. It has to become more institutionalized, and it has to become, in my term, scientific. In other words, we should see across country a national survey, the identification of the vulnerability and the risk that exist in particular communities, and what amount of people are on the vulnerable list that are likely to be mobilized, evacuated to be taken to shelter. Across board, across country, that's the kind of demographic information that we would need. Ministry of Health should have their own technically, and that body and repository should be at the National Entities Office, where across country, especially now, after we had such a strong impact on Piti Matnik, Karikou, and the northern part of the island, St. Patrick, etc., we should be going into this season 1st of July with less apprehension that if we get strike or something repeat itself, we know the amount of people who are likely to be evacuated who would need shelter. And that kind of information should become readily available. And the people within those areas, they should be engaged. They should be made aware in the event that something happened. You are identified as the people who are likely to be moved, and these are the facilities that we would move you into. And an expansion of that would be to have the emergency shelters identified, established, outfitted, so that in the event of any kind of emergency, that people know that these shelters are available. And a shelter management system and structure should be in place. The Ministry of Education, by reason of law or otherwise, because schools were predominantly used as shelters, they are designated by law, by our instruments, as the entities responsible for shelters across country. Whether it is a private building, a public building, schools, community centers, churches, or otherwise, Ministry of Education has sole responsibility.
Okay.
I think a lot of people don't know that.
Well, I actually never knew that. No.
And the Chief Education Officer has a big responsibility to ensure that these things do happen. So according to our national structure or National Emergency Advisory Council, Ministry of Education sits prominently on that advisory body to have oversight responsibility for shelters across country.
Okay.
That's a given. That's an embedded responsibility. So the way the NADMA system is set up is not that the people up at Monjalu are responsible for all of those. They are a coordinating entity.
Okay.
And there are ministries and bodies, private and public entities, that have responsibility for certain aspects. And so shelter is a sole responsibility of Ministry of Education. So while they get the support and the lead from the technical people through NADMA, they have to ensure that that list of schools, community centers, churches, private homes or otherwise, who will give up the facilities to be used as shelters in emergency, that is undertaken. Obviously, it will be brought more to the fore during the hurricane season, but throughout, that should be an ongoing structure. And in a nutshell, in a general sense, people should be aware across countries. NADMA have district coordinators, community movers and shakers who should lead this process, who are identified as managers and members of a shelter management team. Before the impact of any system and throughout regular period, these people should be identified, their roles and responsibilities must be brought to them, and those who have had training, they should be retrained, the aspect of how important that is should be rearticulated across, and every time, ever so often throughout the season, that shelter management and shelter occupation procedure should be repeated, that people know. And I want to re-emphasize, and if it has not been emphasized before, to emphasize that your shelter, your home is your shelter, and there is no place sweeter than home. It means, therefore, that people have to take responsibility to ensure if you cannot build or have not built your house to resist a category 1, 2, or 3, or even a tropical storm standard, there should be some aspect within your 2x4, 4x6, or 20x23 house structure that you have as your habitation, as your house. There should be some section that you designate as a safe place for you and your family as you build. Because, come on, why do you want to give up your personal space?
Going to shelter should be your last resort.
It should be a last resort. And there has to be a shelter occupation period. People tend to also believe that when the storm is about within the warning period, or the hurricane or so is coming, that's when you should get up and move to shelter.
Just go and check to see if you need to nail down your roof properly. And I have seen that happen. And, folks, they say that the storm or the hurricane is just a couple of, miles off.
Oh, no.
Someone just going on their roof and trying to tap a nail.
Yeah, man. Oh, no. People should be looking into that. As a matter of fact, there is a system that in the past we embarked on, what is called the neighbors keeper sort of a principle, whereby you look at your neighbor's facility, or otherwise you enter in a conversation and say, neighbors, I realize you're downstairs, I may have some space. I find my house looking. If something happened, is it possible that me and my two children, we could come over? That kind of brothers
get into that conversation. I'm not sure if it exists much as before.
But it should. We used to do that one time. And I think from the national level, people used to encourage that because you don't know. The point I made prior, in terms of the number of persons to go to shelters, we should have a national inventory, technically, of how many persons by constituency or by districts who are likely to go or move into shelters because they are suspect or by reason of having had a recent impact. 2024, now the number of persons that are likely to go into shelter, and strong effort should be made to ensure that you exceed that expectation, that you are covered, that in the event that people are impacted, that they do have some place to go.
Mr. McIntyre, I'm listening to all of what you're saying here now this morning, sir, but are we, the organizations who are in charge, are they having this kind of conversation among themselves and these, of course, thinking along those lines, sir?
I don't know, and I thought they would not be doing it.
This is serious.
Not serious conversation. That's very serious conversation.
Having this conversation, are they going out and in the neighborhoods in the constituency and seeing the vulnerable ones and say, just in case of Mr. McIntyre and his family may need to be moved?
Yeah.
Because not everyone may be privy to building the best home.
Yeah.
That is understandable.
Yes.
But and you can talk to GT. I say, I find GT houses good. GT, well, we may have to talk to you just in case. Not that we're using your house as a shelter.
Yeah.
But we look at your structure, it is durable. You may be able to accommodate 2 or 3 persons just in case.
Yeah.
For a limited time.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kind of conversation we need to see happening.
But if it's not happening, it should be happening. And if it's happening, it should be a lot more.
It should have started yesterday. You understand?
Yeah. With the Nero's evolution since the early 1970s and so forth, the need for when the Kikam Jenny started showing its face more prevalent, more frequently, the need for having systems like that, the conversation should have started. And over that kind of a years, we should have been building on that aspect of having capacity and inventory as to what our vulnerable population look like, what our resources to match that, and in the event that we do have something, how can we and where should we be able to accommodate people? We should go on and have an inventory, and it should be revised like a database, now electronically driven, where you can build on it or delete or manage it throughout. And I think that's the stage we need to go at. People now should know. Well, our last inventory indicated in 115,000 people, we have come up with 45,000 persons likely need to be sheltered if we have such event. Yeah. And it is spread across country. We are, based on our survey, based on what we are, this community, this village, this parish seems to be most vulnerable. Obviously, resources should be directed, first and foremost, prioritize vulnerable areas.
Yeah. Great, sir. And we're moving up, just around 10 minutes left on today's show. I see the phone lines already going 435-2041. We will be able to accommodate your calls. I think we just flow with the calls as we
can flow the calls.
I think right to the top. Yeah. Guess we lost that caller. 435-2041. I'm seeing there's some comments via the WhatsApp. Let me see if I can get a couple of them out before. Let me take this call and then we go to the technical. Caller live. Good morning.
Good morning, GT and to Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning to you.
Good conversation as we approach the hurricane season. While I appreciate that it's okay to liaise with your neighbor to, accommodate people in times of disaster
disaster, we have to be mindful as to who we do that with, because there are cases where you genuinely want to help, and after the storm passes by, some of these people would hardly make a genuine effort to, repair the place or get a place so that they know they can move on. They somehow expect to sit and wait until maybe government or somebody. So let us be mindful that all of us have a, obligation to strengthen our property and work with whatever disaster that, might be coming. Because there are times when the big houses will go down too.
Yeah.
But we just must, respect and, have love for one another's property.
Yeah.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. And I understand where the caller is coming from. And it's sometimes it's the direction you may not be always thinking.
Yes.
And especially when a disaster may have occurred.
Right.
You may not be thinking there. Someone move into your property, next thing they don't want to move out.
I remember some of the churches were having that challenge with the state mechanism in the past, where the churches were desecrated, decimated, or otherwise and destroyed in some instances, and there was no real system of helping them to recover that loss, that damage, and so on. So when people decide to surrender or give up or accommodate people in their private property or in like churches and other centers, there should be some memorandum of understanding that in the event that your place is damaged as a result of people occupying it for state use, that there should be some assistance in recovering that. And it should be a signed off sort of a MOU, so that persons who got their places destroyed, you can say, okay, we'll give you a concession on material, you can get things sort of, or the state mechanism will make a contribution or will help you to repair or to replace. Those things should not be left hanging. And I think that was one of the resistance we were having in the past, where there were some places, especially churches, that were damaged, people's home and other places that were damaged, and there was no system of guaranteeing that they were going to be assisted.
Okay, great. We do have another caller. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning, you're live.
Yeah, good morning, GT. Good morning to Mr. McIntyre and the viewers and the listeners.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Mr. McIntyre I joined the program late, but he made certain points which resonate with me. And one of it is the need for people to consider their homes, their first place of shelter. And also, I know it was also discussed, and not everybody is able to do so. Mm-hmm. The Prime Minister on Friday, in a keynote address to the Atlantic Council, which I sent you a link on. I sent you a link with the address, with the webinar, in which he talked about certain things, some of the things that we accomplished, some of the difficulties, and I would advise, in the context of Mr. McIntyre talking about the media, the media make use of that, so that so that people would feel a sense of urgency at one level, and a sense of obligation and commitment. Now, I come back to say that unless we take a community-led development approach to things, in which some of the things that have been raised this morning could have been raised in the community, it could have been raised in the workplace, and so on, we will be spinning top in mud. And until we learn how to live together, my fear is that when you have those crises, call it that, we will have chaos and anarchy, because if people are not learning how to live in a sensible way, in normal time, in crisis time, we will see looting and all kinds of things that we have seen in the past, but even worse, with the level of violence, with the effect on climate change and behavior and all of that. We need to sit down and we need to work with everybody. But we also need to acknowledge that we have undermined ourselves by going to the IMF, by taking loans and so on, that now will strangle us without trying to understand that we were being trapped over the years. I know I could talk a lot more, but Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
Indeed, I've been asking for us to deal with the Sendai framework, because if we do that, if we use the Sendai, it will hold, all of us responsible. You talk, GT asked if some of those conversations have been had in different fairs within Grenada, and I would say yes. Recently, there were high-level conversations with people with disability and so on, and some of these issues came up. So we need to really get, and finally, I know I can say the whole morning, the people who should be the first priority in the centers should be the vulnerable people, real vulnerable, not those who stay there vulnerable. We have to work on that system because some people really need to be first considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Yes,
Thank you so much. We have another caller.
Yes.
Caller, you're live. Good morning.
Oh, yes. Good morning to you, Doc. And good morning, Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Is my information that you now have a doctorate?
No, I do not officially possess a doctorate.
Okay, but you're going towards it.
Yes.
Right. No, we're talking care and security law for people. Mr. Joseph Antoine, I want to concur with you, sir. But let me ask this question. How do you explain, in terms of all the things you say, Mr. McIntyre, how do you explain the situation with respect to the people at the Locker Lomi struggling to get the security of tenure? And how do you explain that someone purchased a piece of land from government 16 years and they yet to get a title deed when we're talking about care and love for people? Let me hear your take on this, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good morning. You want to get to that?
Oh, no, that definitely would not form the angle of the conversation this morning, but I think the caller's concern requires a wider discussion, not on this level, except that those places were identified as shelters or otherwise. Outside of that, I would not wish to comment on it. But I think his point is made, it is heard, it is understood that there seems to be some disparity in terms of how that process of ownership of land and property through the state mechanism, how that should happen. Okay. So it seems as though there are some grey areas within there.
Caller live. Good morning via WhatsApp. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Right. I just want to make some comment on works I see taking place on the Central Main Road, what we call Granite Town.
Yes, sir.
Right. The area around there is called as Zima, right? Mm-hmm. I thought the cuts are too vertical.
Right.
And so they will create slippages when the rain really start falling.
Yes, sir.
And I don't like the idea of they using the hollow blocks. That they should have really used
solid concrete.
Caller with us?
The solid continuous mix.
Yeah, caller, go ahead, please. We lost you there for a minute.
Yes. What you find happening now, larger vehicles are now using that road. So you'll find in time to come that they will bounce into those blocks and into those walls, and they will break. Mm-hmm. So they should really use reinforced concrete.
Reinforced concrete. I agree. I concur.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And do the cuts. They should have cut more slant the thing rather than that vertical cut.
Yes.
And there's another piece of road I think they could do a lot of improvement on too. When you leave Chantilly coming up there, that is after Black Forest, that bridge, what we call the highway.
Right.
There's a area that can go straight. Rather than making that right hand curve and then the left curve, they can go straight.
That's correct.
There's some improvements they can do. And I think that's the way they should go. Right, more to cut differently and use reinforced concrete rather than hollow blocks.
Yes, I really
thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
All made sense there.
Yes, and it leaves the question as to what level of consultation and involvement and the engineering design that really go into that area. As he mentioned, the cinder blocks or the hollow blocks are being used. Even if you backfill them as well with the concrete, they cannot be as strong as the reinforced concrete. So when you speak about the heavy equipment, it's not that sometimes they always just bump into it, but in terms of vibration and so on, when you have vibration, it also can affect the integrity of the cinder blocks where you join them with just a bit of mortar. Yeah. So the strength of the integrity would not be as resilient as reinforced concrete. So even vibration would have some impact on the integrity of the material used, all like the blocks.
We already a little bit out of time. We'll take our final caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Caller, good morning. You're live. I think we lost that caller.
You had something you wanted to comment on from the WhatsApp people, and we can conclude.
Yes, that was it's from the WhatsApp. I was trying to go at. But then after reviewing it, I don't think it's going along the direction of our conversation this morning. So I don't think it's necessary. Mr. McIntyre is already 30 seconds after 10 o'clock. I said it a minute and a half after 10 o'clock, and I think it's where we're going to get to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. Interesting conversation this morning as always.
Yes.
I want to thank all who contributed towards today's program. Anything in closing before we take a wrap?
Yes, because our focus conversation was or should have been mainly on shelter and shelter occupation, even shelter management. We'll bridge to possibly expand on that in our next engagement. I just want to let people know still, as one of the callers supported, that your home should be your best shelter, as your home is your castle.
Yeah.
And so investment should be made in it to enhance it continuously. And if you cannot do the entire retrofitting, otherwise ensure that you at least identify and strengthen an area that could become your shelter for you and your family. Just keep that as a focus. Your home is your first shelter.
Once again, Mr. McIntyre, thank you so much, as usual, for coming on today's program and have shared information. We're going to do this next week once time permits, yes, life, strength, everything else in between.
Yes.
And we will be back here once again.
My pleasure. Always.
Hey, folks, that's where we're going to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. Join me again tomorrow for another edition. That's where we say goodbye.